The question is, what have you learned about Indian education, specifically this last year in the UOTeach program?
But what they brought to the UOTeach, I certainly have got some things from them. Definitely how they feel about ecology when we talk about that, and about being in harmony with the land. And they've had a natural way to do that for many, many years, and that they have a lot to give in that area. Also the area of just knowing the self, okay? Like the importance of knowing who you are within and having a certain kind of strength within to use. And I think that goes back to tribal philosophy and spirituality, and they've seemed to be very strong people and to be able to bring that out. And I think that the culture, the general culture in the mainstream would be much more, would not know their self as much and be more attuned to media and economic understanding, market understanding is like a reflection of who they are. And I think that coming from, knowing how to come from like who you are in a spiritual way and believe in yourself and have real self-confidence from the people you come from, I think is very important. I think that they've brought that.
The program has not so much taught, but just kind of opened up the understanding that, I mean, and it's a blatant understanding, but it's kind of something that I haven't really, I guess, been aware of until this program, that the world is so constructed, at least the American world is so constructed through a white lens, which once you kind of grasp that, it really makes you, it's shocking, but it makes you aware of how influential your skin color is in today's society, negatively and positively, and how to teach students to be culturally sensitive to their peers, to history, and help hopefully have the strength to change that, all that comes with that persuasion. I think the program was excellent in that, actually. Additionally, bringing all of the people into the program from different tribes or tribal history or mixed Indian races was really a great way to hear different perspectives that I would have never had the chance to, as a huge group, to come to understand. And I think that was excellent and really interesting.
I think UOTeach has taught me, in terms of Indian education, that it's an education that is rooted in the histories of the past and is a pedagogy that's also rooted in hope for the future, and that without understanding the past, we can't understand the future and how to better serve our students.
I think that when learning about Native studies especially, I mean, that was in my past before, but then actually being able to form relationships with Native students really kind of opened my eyes to the fact that there is this entire other reality to our nation that is just eclipsed and doesn't get talked about. So, I mean, for example, when we say things like post-colonial studies, this is not a post-colonial thing. This is something that's going on currently. There are groups of people that are still feeling colonized. When we use language that isn't inclusive of Native experience, that also is something that I really thought about and has become more a part of the way that I think about educating students and also my experiences with people in general. I think also when we talk about issues concerning social justice, we really tend to think really outside of our local communities often, and even we tend to think maybe too globally. And the reality is these experiences are happening in our backyards. They're happening 30 miles away. And so really being able to make that localized and being like, these are people that you're living with, on the same land with, and just kind of making that more clear to students, because I think that it's something that they forget often.
To be honest, I have not learned enough about Indian culture in this program. There could be a lot more that could be said. However, I will use a lot of the stuff we learned in Edmondson's class, such as the different interpretations of Columbus imperializing North America, how America was not uninhabited, or that whole theory. both of those were interesting. I'd heard them before, but I think we really dove into them a little bit in Jeff's class last year, so that was good.
I think a lot of the things that I heard from the Native students in the program was a lot about how it's really hard to work within a system that has been used to, you know, systematically put, you know, their ancestors down for generations, and how it's strange to be in that system and trying to work for justice within this construct that hasn't been a positive one historically. So that's given me a lot to think about, and then just going from that and thinking about you know, how I would change my classroom, or thinking about Native students that would be in my classroom. I would, you know, I think I've definitely, since the beginning of this program, when I think about lesson planning, I think a lot about making sure to include and say the significance of how important it is to recognize all of these experiences that have happened that aren't normally in the history books as a history teacher. Okay, so as a history teacher, I think one of the most important things that I've done so far is I had students analyze textbooks to see who's included, when they're included, and you know, there's always like this little blurb about Native American Indians and, like, you know, the Trail of Tears or something, but that's where it stops. And I think the important thing for students to think about, like Jackie was saying, was that it's not, it didn't just stop, it's still happening, it's still going on, and to get students really engaged and seeing, you know, I think one of the most powerful presentations for me was Jason's on Salila Falls, because that was amazing to see. And I'm not from the Northwest, so I don't know all of the histories out here, but because of being in this program and having Native students in the program with me, I think that's going to be something that I'm really going to research more about, because I want to know more about that.
I think also what I've learned in UOTeach is kind of the collective and the community that I've been able to develop and share, and a friendship with my Native American brothers and sisters in the program, and really kind of having that connection and being there for each other, and understanding that it takes a collective of individuals to serve our communities, and that we can't do it with this kind of Western construct of individuality, that it does take a whole entire village to serve our communities. And I've also learned too that I can depend on them, and that we can depend on each other, and that with the power of our collective, we can serve our communities.
Down to the University of Oregon campus. Stretch out, get yourself a tan, socialize with all the locals.